really around the digital change tools, which are quite new for a lot of us. Yolanda, do you think South African organizations are ready for digital change tools? And if so, why?
I think, once again, the tools are amazing in that they provide us with almost a portfolio view of all the changes across the organization, to what extent they're impacting people within the organization, how we can make better sort of change decisions because we have that view. But a tool is only an enabler, right? And for me, I feel as if we have to first get the right things right before we focus on the technology. And if the people in the room today, just based on the questions that Debbie asked in terms of where we are in our change maturity, then I'd probably say yes and no. So there are those that are evolved, and there are those who are catching up, and there are those who are completely ignorant. So yes, they bring about immense value, but I think that value is only realized when there's a certain level of maturity and appreciation of change management and change leadership, internal change management capabilities, and then only will we really fully realize the benefits of digital change tools.
Thank you.
Right. It's not a question per se. It's just to add on to what Yolanda said now, around the tools. The tools are great and all, but if you don't have the right data, it's not going to work. And I think the biggest challenge right now around in many of our organizations in SA is that the data we have is not. We can't place a lot of integrity on the quality of the data we have. So if we can't place value on it, we can't use it.
Thanks very much. I have two questions. One is more an observation. So we talk about tools, and you talk about integration and how much closer we want change to get in, especially in our world where there's a lot of technology. So how do you ensure that you, whilst you're integrating from a more technical perspective, you're aligning that to bringing on board change, so that change becomes part of that, because it doesn't really matter whether it's technology or whether it's a new dimension in the business. The slowest portion of any change is really the people dynamics. And the other part of that is, it's great to identify and get your sponsorship from leaders, but what I often find lacking is that your immediate teams are also not always brought on board to understand what change and the value change brings within that rollout or whatever it is you're hoping to achieve.
Thanks for that, Aubrey. So I think what is really important is, Aubrey was saying that when you're working within a team, sometimes the people within the team don't appreciate the value of change management or understand it. So one of the important things for the change management fraternity is that we constantly need to educate people around what change management is, what the purpose of it is, why we're doing it, very importantly. And part of what we do with every single project that we kick off is we have an onboarding session with the project team. We also, throughout the life cycle of the project, do team cohesion assessments to make sure that people understand where we are in the change process, and that where we are at risk, we're able to address that. So there are things that can be put in place to educate, but to also give us early warning signs where we have got people that haven't bought in or aren't aware. Thanks, Aubrey.
Yeah, I think for me the big question is, with the shift now in terms of the landscape in which change takes place, how have you seen that change methodologies need to change? And especially also, I would say, you talk about change within a project environment versus dependency on culture. So if the culture is lagging and the environment has shifted, how do you approach your change methodologies?
Um, to be very honest with you, I'm not a very big fan of prescribing to very specific methodologies all the time. I think there are great benefits in getting those guiding principles, because I think the guiding principles from a change management perspective are usually quite consistent. But I definitely do see a benefit for organizations to start building their own narratives and their own frameworks and methodologies around change management. I honestly don't believe in like a one-size-fits-all approach to change. I mean, we've got Agile right now that's really disrupting and changing existing notions around change management, and it's really confusing a lot of us change practitioners. And that, for me, speaks to the need for change management in itself as a discipline to be adaptable and flexible. Because I think Sean mentioned it, a lot of organizations are heavily reliant on change management practitioners because of the levels of maturity. But in the next years to come, organizations will be much more agile and more change resilient, and we would possibly have to review the role of change practitioners. We would probably look at probably playing a more supportive role rather than one that is literally hand-holding the organization. So there's definitely, just in my opinion, a need to continuously review the relevance of our frameworks and our methodologies and how that plays out within an organizational context.
Maybe if I can add to that, and maybe your points, Yolanda. I think very often, even when we talk about change, we see it as being time-based. That's one of the dangers of being linked to innovation and projects. So within Nedbank, we have very clear visions around where we want to be by 2020. And the world kind of sees that, okay, so we're going to change in 18, 19, then 20, we stop because we've achieved our change. But that's the wrong mindset. We are going to be changing all the time. Either we're going to be managing the change or the change is going to be happening to us. And if you I don't want to install that mindset in the leadership and in the people in the business, that change is a reality and that you're going to have to continue embracing it if you're going to be part of any industry, then I think it maybe changes that paradigm, because it does then start addressing things like change fatigue. If you're not comfortable with change, you're going to battle. So I think there is a bit of a mindset shift that has to come into organizations in that context.
So, last question, Lynn.
That's me. Is this one? Yeah. It isn't really a question. It's just really backing up what you're saying as a panel. Our change methodology has to change. And that in itself, I believe, we have to target the greater business rather than the project in which we're working. So my starting point would be that division called Human Remains.
I love it.
Resources. In our recruitment methodologies, how do we recruit? You want resilience. You want leadership with resilience. So your whole recruitment and performance measurement frameworks have to change. And I think that's what we as practitioners have to influence. Otherwise, yes, we will be employed forever in the industry because we'll constantly go in on projects to change or to try and implement a change into an organization that hasn't built enough resilience itself to make the transition.
Hi. You spoke a lot about gamification as one of the trends. I'd like to know, what are the successful gamification platforms you've currently experienced within your change programs, and what would you suggest as the benchmark for that?
I can't answer. We were very excited about gamification, and we realized very quickly that within our particular environment there wasn't an appetite for it. So it's something that we've had limited exposure to. It's an interesting one because I think very often, and the question was raised around the different generations. My personal experience has not been that the millennials are the problem, because they understand the need to change. They understand transformation. They love digitization. They love gamification. It is very often that the thought leaders who are driving the change almost have too much to lose in the change, or they're probably not going to see the change through. And one of my colleagues uses the analogy of turkeys voting for Christmas. If you close to retirement and you're transforming an organization, there's a good chance you're not going to see the benefits of that. You're just going to feel the pain. You're going to see the disruption. You may even compromise your bonus and your share scheme over the next 2 or 3 years. So I'm not answering your question around gamification, but it's actually, because you've got almost 3 or 4 generations in certain organizations, the importance of flexibility when it comes to supporting, in this case, L&D capabilities that resonate is very, very important.
And just to share with that, we have actually introduced some of our clients to organizations that are running with gamification platforms, apps, etc., that are used. Some incredible success stories on the uptake across generations. So there is definitely an appetite building for it. I think it's still fairly new in South Africa. And the principles behind it are really cool because they focus on how you actually create almost a competitive approach to learning. And that drives the desire to want to participate. And there's reward built into it. So there's some lovely things out there. I think it's early days. Again, early maturity around it, but it's coming. And I think it can be applied across generations.